Today we'll talk about the famous Wagyu marbled beef, how one of the world's greatest meat delicacies appeared in originally vegetarian Japan, what genetic passports, cow massages, and cow nose prints have to do with it, why Wagyu, contrary to stereotypes, has long ceased to be just a Japanese story. Today, we'll try to figure it out. The Japanese started eating meat relatively recently, but cows appeared on the Japanese islands a very long time ago. According to one version, they lived in Japan since prehistoric times and were then more pahoji on bison. According to another version, they were brought later from the territories of modern China and Korea. In general, Japanese peasants kept cows, but considered slaughtering them for meat wasteful and did not even drink milk. Instead, they plowed with cows and used them as draft animals. And in the 6th century AD, Emperor Tenmu, under the influence of Buddhism, legally banned the eating of meat altogether. The ban was lifted in the 19th century, after the country opened itself to foreign influence. Foreign innovations, foreign goods, and foreign specialists poured into Japan. And you know, these specialists wanted meat. The Japanese had to give in, and soon they themselves acquired a taste for it, with the biggest fan of beef becoming the Japanese emperor. By that time, Japan already had a primitive form of cattle breeding selection. Specialists identified pedigree cows with exceptional breeding qualities. Such breeding lines were called tsuru. It was in one such line that a bull named Tajiri-Go appeared, the legendary ancestor of most modern Wagyu cows. The port city of Kobe, where he was born, is now considered the birthplace of marbled beef. By the way, its exceptional qualities were discovered rather accidentally. There were many foreigners in Kobe longing for roast beef, and local breeds began to be slaughtered for meat for them. These breeds had originally been developed with emphasis not on taste qualities, but on endurance and a docile temperament. And suddenly it turned out that besides endurance, they had another exceptional quality: incredibly tender pink meat from the large amount of marbled fat. Today, this breed is known as Tajima, or the Japanese black cow. In fact, the term Wagyu originally translated simply as Japanese cow. But this was not yet the famous gourmet beef known today. Once the Japanese began breeding cows for meat, they quickly realized that local breeds lost to foreign ones in the most important thing: mass. And here foreign breeders came to the rescue, who had long been supplying Western cattle breeds to other Asian countries. A campaign of hybridization and crossbreeding began. Some experiments were successful, others not so much. The weight of the cows was increased, but after crossing with European breeds, the bull's temperament noticeably deteriorated. They became more aggressive and willful. Therefore, the crossbreeding program that began in 1900 was shut down by the Japanese government already in 1912, declaring that all objectives had been achieved and that further work would focus on eliminating the negative characteristics of hybrid cattle. Japanese legislation continued for a long time to clearly divide Wagyu cattle into purebred and improved, meaning hybridized. But with breeds, at first there was some confusion. More than 60 were registered, although many were no different from each other, simply living in different regions of the country. By the late 1950s, Japanese livestock breeders arrived at the modern definition of Wagyu beef: meat from cows of one of 4 breeds: Japanese black, Japanese brown, Japanese polled, and Japanese shorthorn. The division between improved and purebred animals was removed so as not to confuse the consumer. As a result, only 2 purebred breeds that had never been crossed with Europeans remained: Mishima and Kuchinoshima. But such meat is hard to find. The population is too small. Wagyu in Japan is considered a national treasure and is supported at the state level. The import of foreign cattle into the country is restricted, and imported meat will never receive the Wagyu label. In addition, on packaging you can see markings like A5, B5, A4. And this is not paper format, but the Japanese meat grading system. The letter is the pure meat yield in descending order. A is more than 75% of the carcass. B is from 70 to 75%, and so on. The number is the quality of the meat, color, firmness, and other important characteristics. There is also a separate marbling scale from 1 to 12, and it is also taken into account when assigning the alphanumeric grade. A5 is the highest quality meat possible, but B5 and A4 are also considered benchmark quality. Other countries have their own evaluation systems. Australians measure meat quality from 3 to 5 stars and separately measure marbling. Australian Wagyu has an index from MS0 to MS9+. 0, accordingly, means a complete absence of marbling. Quality standards in Japan are maintained through a registration system and individual numbers on packaging. Using the DNA database, one can, if desired, completely trace the fate of each individual steak and discover its pedigree. You know, cows have passports. They obviously cannot sign and leave fingerprints. So this function is performed by the cow's nose print. Like human fingerprints, it also has a unique pattern. There are many stories online about how Wagyu cows are raised, in particular, that they are given massages and fed sake. This is partly true. They are brushed with special brushes so that blood circulates better. And in cold weather, they really are given alcohol to stimulate appetite. The bulls are raised not for 15 months like more ordinary breeds, but for 3 years. And they are, of course, fed grain with various additives. For example, the most prestigious variety of Wagyu today is considered olive Wagyu, invented quite recently in 2006. It is raised on Shotoshima Island, which is famous for its olive groves. At some point, a local cattle breeder began adding specially processed olive peels to the feed, and the meat became exceptionally rich in flavor. But the most famous variety remains Kobe beef, from the suburbs of the city of the same name. No more than 3,000 Kobe category cattle are slaughtered annually. Naturally, such meat becomes an object of pursuit for gourmets. The secret of Wagyu is, of course, in the fat, in the network of thin, fatty veins resembling marble. Because of them, the meat literally melts in your mouth. Ordinary beef fat melts at 40 or 50 degrees Celsius, Wagyu at 30, so it literally releases juice already in your hands. An important role is also played by the characteristic, slightly sweet aroma of Wagyu, for which special chemical compounds, lactones, are responsible. Compounds also found in peaches and coconut. When heated, this aroma only becomes stronger. In Japan, Wagyu was traditionally consumed in dishes called sukiyaki and shabu-shabu. Both dishes consist of very thinly sliced meat, briefly dipped into hot water or vegetable broth. Another classic option is gyudon, thin slices of beef laid over rice and covered with sauce. Wagyu is also used to make tataki, sashimi, yakitori skewers, and even cutlets. The Japanese are known purists, and beef is no exception. They insist that Wagyu is exclusively the meat of Japanese cattle, raised exclusively in Japan, slaughtered and butchered in specific regions. But the rest of the world does not entirely agree with them, and is not ready to grant Japan exclusive rights to this astonishingly delicious meat. Not least because Wagyu with the proper pedigree costs an outrageous amount of money. The price per kilogram of A5 grade beef starts at $500 per kilogram, and you still have to find it. As a result, livestock breeders in other countries have long been raising Wagyu outside Japan and have invented several methods for doing so. The first is obvious. Take a cow from one of the proper 4 breeds and raise it in your own country while following all the important procedures. Australia is famous for this method. Australia produces outstanding Wagyu that is indistinguishable in taste from Japanese Wagyu. Such cows live in no less luxury than in their homeland. Sometimes they are even given red wine. However, the Japanese do not like selling their legendary cattle, and if they do, it is for insane amounts of money, reasonably assuming that a national treasure should cost dearly. The Japanese monitor compliance with the rules in this field very strictly. Another method of producing Wagyu is the implantation of Japanese cattle embryos into local breeds. It is a labor-intensive and risky undertaking, but the result is also a purebred Wagyu animal. But there is also a third method, called Cross-Wagyu. This is the same hybridization that originally gave the world Japanese beef, only in a modern form. Here, the Wagyu breed passes its unique properties to its descendants through crossbreeding. Ideally, the meat turns out to be of the same quality, but costs significantly less. Most often, Wagyu cattle are crossed with the Black Angus beef breed, no less legendary and also marbled. It is believed that Angus, in its original form, can sometimes be a bit tough. But when crossed with Wagyu, this problem is solved. The meat becomes juicier while retaining its texture. Hybrids of Japanese and Scottish cattle, by the way, produce more meat, are distinguished by good fertility and strong health. They are extremely popular in America and are rapidly conquering other countries. Such bulls can be found all over the world, from Namibia to New Zealand. What is remarkable in the history of Wagyu is the passion with which people classify food. Meat, wine, cheese, all of this, at the first opportunity, turns into an object of national prestige, becomes legally protected, divided into categories, supplied with passports, entered into databases, studied by chemists and biologists, and analyzed almost at the molecular level. It is a matter of prestige, big money, economics, and, in general, the fate of entire regions or even countries. But above all, what this shows is that people simply really love to eat.